All right. So we tonight are beginning to discuss this very, very fundamental mitzvah of charity, of tzedakah. And it's just the mitzvahs are the ways God wants us to serve him. He gave us commandments, 613 biblical, thousands of rabbinic, and every commandment he gave us, he wants us to do something. Sometimes he wants our heart, sometimes he wants our mind. Here he wants our money. And we're going to spend a while discussing lots of things going on in this very seemingly simple commandment. Put the coin in the pushka, write the check. Some of the underpinnings of this mitzvah. It is a very, very special mitzvah. It's a very special commandment. Actually, in the Talmud Yerushalmi, it is referred to as the mitzvah, meaning just like if it says prayer, we know it means Shemona Esrei, the Amidah, that is the most essential prayer. So if it says in the Talmud Yerushalmi, ha mitzvah, the commandment, we know it means charity, which is very interesting. Why do you think so? Why do you think the sages in the Talmud Yerushalmi are saying the commandment is charity? Any ideas? Why would they view it as the most important commandment? If no one volunteers, I'm going to call on someone. There's not that many people to call on. Watch out. Heidi, what do you think?
I don't know. I wonder if it's because it's like connected to other mitzvahs in some way. So somehow it has like a connection in the other mitzvahs that we do.
Meaning like it's a foundational
kind of
idea
like
of
the far
chesed, so it's sort of
yeah, kind of like it's like one of the
comprises
foundational,
many other acts of chesed that Hashem wants from us.
right? Yeah, and that also like it can enable other people to do mitzvahs as well. So like if you're giving to the poor, it could be helping people, you know, make Shabbos and stuff like that. So it's far-reaching, I guess. I don't know.
Makes sense. No, I'm
The best I
guessing. No, not expecting anybody, just what you're thinking. Simcha, what do you think?
Did I look like I was thinking?
Yes, I saw your face.
I was kind of thinking like when you give charity, you're giving away kind of money is something that people hold on to. It's something that's yours. You think, you might think you need it, but it's like helping you feel or show that your trust in Hashem or your, you know, recognition that it's not just your doing of making that money or that kind of stuff. That was what was running through my head, I guess.
It makes a lot of sense. You know, a lot of us define ourselves by money we earn, how much we earn, how we earn it, what we do with it. So in so many different ways, money has become, for so many of us, you know, a symbol of everything of ours. Everything that's ours, that we earn, that we worked for, that defines us, and then we go and give it away. So that is a pretty foundational service of God. So we're saying here that charity is the commandment, which shows how significant it is. If you were the sages, just a thought question, spark your thoughts. If you were the sages, would you pick charity? Is there another commandment you would view as the foundational commandment that you think is the ultimate one? Like if someone's going to do one, they should do this. This is the go-to commandment for everyone. If you want to take 613 and make it one, it should be this one. Any thoughts on that?
Isn't it like Ahavas Yisrael? Isn't that, I don't know, that's what I think.
I think a lot of people could understand. I can understand why you say Ahavas Yisrael, which would incorporate charity, and many, 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 many other commandments.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that getting a lot of votes out there in the Talmudical academies in Babylonia, if they're trying to figure out which is, the Jerusalemites, they said charity. We think something else. Let's vote. I can imagine Simcha's opinion in her previous lifetime getting a lot of votes. Something else you can envision as like, that's the commandment in what resonates most inside of you.
I always hear the number one thing when you pass away, when you go up to Shemayim, is that they're not going to ask you about any of those things. They're going to ask you, were you honest in business?
It says there's two questions that when a soul leaves this world, it doesn't mean it's the only two questions, but the two questions we're all going to get is, were you honest and did you anticipate the coming of Mashiach? Tzipisa Yeshua. Those are the two questions that we're told all souls are asked. Were you honest in your business dealings? And did you anticipate the redemption? But again, it doesn't mean those are the only two. If you say yes, it doesn't mean you're off the hook for life or for eternity. It just means how it's expressing how important those things are, that those are going to be like the first two questions that every one of us has to testify. Yes, I was honest in all my business dealings, and yes, I was very Mashiach focused. Someone has something else. So Simcha's putting out a few. She said, Ahavas Yisrael, honesty. Anyone has something else they would feel is a contender for the commandment that really is so primary that it should be almost like in competition with charity?
Maybe learning Torah, because it's kind of all encompassed.
I definitely think you would garner a lot of votes also. Definitely Torah, I'm sure.
I probably would have voted for Simcha's, but you wanted something else. So.
You have voted for Ahavas Yisrael, but if I'm looking at something else, you'll say Torah study. No, I totally understand both headsets, meaning I understand the idea of saying loving another Jew is the foundational commandment, especially because you could, if Simcha was giving her speech in the Talmudic Academy of Pompadisa or Naharda, and she was advocating for her cause, she could definitely say, listen, the commandments are divided between man and God and between man and man. The foundation of all between man and man is its love. So I just encapsulated 50% of all the commandments right now. So that would be a very strong support, and I'm sure she would get a lot of votes. On the other hand, I think what you're saying, Heidi, also has a lot of merit, even if you don't even believe in it as much, because the argument I would give if I was arguing out there in Pompadisa or Naharda or Soria to defend this is every commandment is based on Torah study. If you don't study Torah, you don't have any of the commandments. You don't know how to do any of them. You don't know what you're supposed to do. You don't know when you're supposed to do it. You don't know how you're supposed to do it. Torah study is foundational, and from Torah study, you can come to do everything else. And that's, of course, the point of Torah study, to lead us to serving God completely. Take away Torah study, you've got zero. When you have Torah study in place, now you have the ability for all of them. And you could also, of course, there's other deeper reasons as well. So I think those are two great contenders. Now, this was never discussed in the Talmudic academies of Babylonia. So we're just fantasizing here. In the Jerusalem Academy, they did say it because they said charity, which is what we're talking about. But, it's interesting if you really would think this through in your mind. And the reason why I did this was really to understand that when the sages of Jerusalem said charity, it wasn't like, we'll say charity is the most important commandment. There's a lot of contenders. And despite the great argument for loving another Jew, and I think that's a great vote, and despite the great point of saying Torah study, still charity won. Still charity is the ultimate commandment, and we'd like to know why. So in going in Hasidic thought, in the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe, Reb Shlomo Zalman Adi, explains that every commandment binds a person to God through a certain limb, through a certain faculty, through a certain area of your life. In other words, when you study Torah, for example, to use Heidi's example, well, your brain and the process of intellect are now bound up. They're vehicles that are embodying the divine will. They're connecting us to God. My brain is connected to God right now, as hopefully as everyone's on our class. Our process of intellect right now is fused with God's intellect because we're thinking his Torah, we're thinking his thoughts. And so too, every commandment. When I pray, which will be another good contender, I'm employing my faculty of speech, my emotions, my love for God, my awe of God. That's all bound up with God's will as I pray. Some mitzvahs, some commandments employ my hands or my feet, my capacity for joy, for sadness, for awe, for hope. Commandments dictate God's will. God has a will how I should get dressed, how I should eat, how we should build a home, how we should marry, how we should bury our dead. God has a will for every one of these things, every aspect of our life. And as we fulfill his will and do that commandment, that act is now bound up with God. That part of me is bound up with God. That physical item is bound up with God. But that's all true except for one commandment, the commandment of charity. How is charity different? Charity is the only commandment that is performed with the totality of the person. When I'm praying, I perhaps use my mind, I'm using my speech, I'm using my emotions, and the rest of me is out of the picture. When I'm studying, I'm using my mind, I might be using my speech, I might be using my hands, I might be using my eyes, the rest of me is out of the picture. But when I give charity, my entire being is involved. And therefore, my entire being is connected to God. Why? Because when you give charity, you're giving your very life for two reasons. When we give this coin to charity, I could have purchased life for myself with it, food, a roof over my head, my mortgage, my rent, a coat for the winter, boots for the snow, things that are giving me life. But I didn't. I gave it away. And to earn this coin that I'm giving away, I devoted my whole being. For most people in the world, you invest your whole self to earn money. It's hard. Again, there's some people that have it not so hard, and they earn money very peripherally, very peripheral investment of self. There must be a few people like that out there in the world. But for the high majority of the world, whatever your profession is, and however much you're earning for that profession, you invest a lot of self to succeed in your job. So when you give money from your earnings, your whole self went in to creating that money. And that money could give you life itself. If you think of it very simply, the piece of bread that's keeping your soul in your body, or any of the other paraphernalia we need for life. And you're giving it away to God. So what part of me is connecting to God when I give charity? Everything. My total self is connecting to God when I give charity. And that's one of the reasons why, and of course there are many thoughts, why the Talmud of Jerusalem said this is the ultimate commandment. Because every commandment gives a piece of you to God. This commandment gives everything. Now, how many people out there, and you could vote virtually, feel this when you give charity? When you give charity, you feel the stretch of it. You feel I worked hard for this money. It's not easy to give it away. I need it for things that we need to sustain our life, or even extras, like a vacation would enhance my life. A new vacuum cleaner would enhance my life. A maid would enhance my life. Or being able to shop more at Jewel would give me more life. How many people really feel that when they give charity, that they're really giving themselves over to God, that they're really stretching and giving life, their life, that when they work for that money and then they give it away. If you want to vote, you can. If you want to say yes, on the bottom of your screen, you should have reactions, and you can open that up and give a hand or a thumbs up that yes, you do feel that.
Oh, I always feel like that. How it's my Yetzer Hara. It's like, okay, and lately there's been a lot of things to give money to, right? Because COVID came, a lot of different people needed money, a lot of different things happened and stuff. But yeah, I mean, but then I said, oh no, well, okay. I said, I'm gonna give $18 to this one. Nope, now I'm gonna give 36 because that's what I should do because yes, it's gonna
So
stretch you.
you're saying you fight it. But the truth
Fight
is, the point, I don't know if you could even call it your the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination will be saying, don't give because I don't want to give away my life. But the feeling that it's your life is not necessarily evil inclination. It's actually, as we're saying, the truth. The truth isn't the evil inclination. The evil inclination is complete falseness.
That's true. Like I'm
It's
thinking,
true.
okay, well, is the heating bill going to be $50 more this month? Because if it is, because it's getting cold outside, and I give that $36, am I going to have it?
There's on both levels. On both levels for some people of you invest yourself to earn the money, and the second level of all the things that money is supposed to cover. And that's the point. It's not a negative point. That's like, in a sense, the positive point we're saying. If you were just praying to God, you give him your mouth, you give him your mind, you give him your heart. If you're eating kosher, you give him your digestive system. Here, you have an opportunity because it's hard. Because even if it's not hard, you can say, no, it's not hard for me, but I still feel it's giving life. You could be giving your life and it's not hard, but it's still giving life. You feel you work to earn that money. It's really life you need, and you're giving it away. So you can feel that I'm really giving life now to God, my life, the totality of me. And that's the point. And that's why it's so powerful. So not everyone said that. I mean, some people felt that about charity, but not everyone. Do people have something else that they feel that pull more, that they feel just be very personally for you? Doing that commandment, that's me giving everything to God. That's really challenging. That's really pulling me. That's really demanding. That's where I'd say I'm giving my whole self to God. Anyone have something else that they would view instead? I'm not saying that there is one. It's just a person could feel that way. Okay. So we're agreeing, because definitely some people said, yes, charity is really hard. Or even if it's not hard, it really feels very big because we're working hard for that money and we need that money. And yet God said, give to him. Shalamis?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to say something about giving tzedakah. So for me, I feel like the money that I make is really not mine anyways. I mean, it's all decided by Hashem anyways. So I don't know. It feels like, well, I give and then I get and then I give more, and it just keeps going back and forth like that. I mean, I've been on both ends of the spectrum. So
that's exactly how you're supposed to feel.
Yeah.
What Shalama said is the response, if it becomes from a truth that makes the commandment so important to an evil inclination desiring to hold back, is that, and that's the ultimate answer. It's not your money. You're being, as we'll discuss, probably not today, God's banker here. He's giving you some for you and some for you to distribute for him. And when you're a faithful banker, you distribute the money and you feel grateful that God is trusting you. As Shalama said, you could be on either end. You could be the giver, you could be the recipient. Some of us at the same time givers and recipients. That's very possible in life. Or at one time you were a giver, now you're a recipient. You were a recipient, now you're a giver. So we feel grateful to God that he chose us to be a giver. And we know we might be a recipient, but at the same time be a recipient. So we're grateful that we have the opportunity to be a giver, and we acknowledge that it's not my money, meaning from what I earned, whatever percentage you cut off, that's God's money. So I'm not, I could have bought what I should have bought, what I need. Not your money. It's not your money. So, well, it's irrelevant. You're going to start looking at your neighbor's bank account and speculating how come they're not handing it over to you. It's not your money. So when you think of it like that, as Shalamis is saying, it's a very healthy way. And as we will discuss today, it's a very strong way to create money is the act of giving charity. Also, what you're probably realizing from this whole concept, that when you give charity, you're giving your whole self. A person could say, wait a minute. So I gave $18, I gave $36, I gave $50. I mean, I obviously earned more than that. So why is it my whole self was invested and earned this money. My whole self can gain life from this money. I'm just giving a portion. So it's very important to understand this idea of creating a percentage that you give of charity of your earnings. So the most basic minimal percentage is 10% of whatever your net earnings are, not your gross, from your net earnings, 10%. Obviously, it's advised to give more, 15%, 20%, more than 20%. But the creating a percentage, whatever it is, let's say 10%, gives the ability that whatever you're doing is really viewed through the prism of the totality, the total work, the total investment of self, because the percentage only exists if there's a total. Meaning, if I'm a generous person and I see someone, I pull a few dollars out of my wallet and I give them, that's nice, but it's not affecting anything else. So if I work today for 10 hours and I earn, I don't know, $250, and I give $5 to charity, I give $5 to charity. That's not 10 hours worth of work. If you want to think of it that way, it's whatever work it takes me to earn $5. At the rate I said, 15 minutes. So you gave 15 minutes to God. You didn't give 10 hours to God. But if you create a percentage and you stick to that percentage and you say, from whatever I earn, I'm giving 10% to God. So you earn $250 today, you're giving $25. So it's not like, okay, so $25 took me 1 hour, so it's an hour of work I gave to God. No, all 10 hours you gave to God. Because to create the $25, you needed to work for 10 hours. Because you're giving 10% of your earnings. And it doesn't make a difference what percentage you give, it's the same concept. To create the percentage, you need the whole. So therefore, when you give a percentage spiritually, the whole is affected. So all day long work is now going to God, is now part of connecting to God, is now part of serving God. I can say I'm giving my whole life here because I have to work all day to create the percentage from which this money comes from. So that's why it's very, very, very important from a spiritual perspective to make sure you have a percentage that you give to charity. Now, we said we're going to talk about a pushka, a charity box. Why do I want to speak about a charity box? Because most of us have charity boxes. And charity boxes are viewed as sort of those little innocuous things in our house. We don't really realize the enormous spiritual, some clever collector, who knows when, came up with the concept and it works and it's practical for them and practical for us. Put a few coins in, everyone has a few coins, right? No, there's actually a tremendous spiritual energy in a charity box, in a pushka. Why? Well, on the most basic level, it makes charity accessible to everyone. You might not have a lot of money to give. You might not even have a few dollars to give, but surely you have a few coins. So it enables everyone to be a giver because everyone can put a few coins, a few nickels, dimes, whatever, in a box every day. So everyone's giving charity. So makes it accessible to all of us. But there's a lot more deep spiritual reasons behind a charity box. There's 3 very important points that are accomplished specifically with a pushka, with a charity box. What are they? Well, one is a charity box enables a lot more times to give. Maimonides, the great 12th century sage Maimonides, he said, how often is more important than how much. That's a pretty big statement if you're talking about charity. but how often is more important than how much. How often you give is more impactful in a sense than how much you're giving. Why? So let's say you want to give an organization $365. You write a check for $365 and the organization gets a $365 donation and they're very appreciative. Let's rescript it. You don't write a check for $365. You get a stack of dollar bills from the bank and every day you put $1 in your charity box, $1 in your push cup for an entire year. Of course, you're not giving on Sabbath or the holidays. So I'm just saying this allegorically, not literally. After 365 days, which is more than a year because you can't give on Sabbath or the holidays, there's your $365 donation. But something else also happened. Your hand became a giving hand. Your hand was trained to give because every day you're giving another dollar with that hand. It's a Jewish concept that a person is more influenced by the things he does than by the knowledge he is taught. So doing every single day, which the pushka, the charity box, makes accessible, really teaches my hand to be a giving hand. That's one very important gain of a pushka, of a charity box. Second, very important gain of a charity box. It's not just me. The charity box changes the air, changes the living space. The Lubavitcher Rebbe says that when you have a charity box in your home or in your office, it redefines the entire space. It's not just a home. It's not just an office. This is a center of kindness and caring. And therefore, the Rebbe suggested that people take the charity box and literally bang it into the walls of their house. If any of you have been to my house, you have seen, if you noticed, in my kitchen, there's a charity box affixed to the wall. That literally the walls of the house are now part of the concept of charity. So that's a second incredible advantage in a pushka, in a charity box. There's a third advantage. The third advantage is time. Just as we said, if every day you give $1, your hand changes, time changes. Time needs to be elevated. If you do one action, you elevate those moments. You wrote that check, you elevate that moment you wrote the check. Again, if you instead of writing one check, you give it in 365 increments, many actions, even very small actions, are elevating many, many moments of time. That's why the Baal Shem Tov said every day has to have an act of giving. That some energy of the time of the day has to be elevated to be an act, an energy, a moment of kindness. So what's happening here is actually with a simple, innocuous little pushka, charity box in your house that you never think much about, this little humble box, you're elevating time, space, and person. That is a Kabbalistic concept, the need to elevate time, space, and person. And when you have a charity box, you're elevating all three in one fell swoop. So it's really an incredible concept. And again, I'm sure most of us have charity boxes in our house. But if you look at it with that set of eyes, you're like, wow, this is such a powerful tool. Because I truly give every day or perhaps multiple times a day. And this is truly training my hand. And this is changing the energy of my house, the atmosphere. This is elevating all these moments of time. So much, so powerful in this little pushka. So that's a very, very powerful thought. Appreciate your pushkas more. Something else about charity is that it's a way to be God's tabernacle, to be God's home. In other words, whenever we proactively serve God, we are God's home for that moment. Okay, someone asked me, so I'm going to go back. What specific times should you give? That's a great question. So I will list a few times that you should give. The basic times you want to give is one, in the morning. It should be part of your morning routine, like before. Don't leave your house without it, to paraphrase. You want to make sure you put something in the charity box before you leave. Even if you're in a rush, have it near your door. If you have a little table, a little hall, charity box, have a bowl with coins. Don't leave home without it. Make sure you give. What I do for myself, for each one of my children, I make a little pile next to the charity box to remind them to give. And then I could just count the pile, see what's left, and figure out who didn't give yet. So in the morning for sure. Before you pray, morning or afternoon prayer, you're supposed to give charity. Why? Because there's a verse that says to. Before you say Psalms, before you say Tehillim, you're supposed to give charity. Why? Because it will add power and strength to what the Psalms are supposed to accomplish. We've spoken, of course, about Psalms many times. We've spoken about how Psalms bring down God's kindness and compassion. Charity is like the ultimate gate that opens up like the doors of heaven. So you really want to connect every commandment to charity if you can, if you think of it as a specific commandment. So the one that we do on a daily basis for sure, before the morning and afternoon prayers, anytime during the day when you say Psalms. Now, if you say Psalms at night, well, you're not supposed to say Psalms at night, but if you say Psalms like after midnight, which nowadays Jewish midnight is like 11:30 something. So you didn't get to say Psalms by day. It's dark, no big deal. You'll say it tonight. You're up late. You can say Psalms then, but you can't give charity then. But if you're saying Psalms by day, you should give charity before to add fuel to your Psalms. That's like a given every day. And then in general, we're told that charity should be the gateway of every commandment. So if you could think of something that's a commandment, like for example, if you make challah, to do the commandment of the separating of the dough of challah, hafrashas challah, before you separate that dough and make the blessing, give charity. Before you light the candles for Shabbos or for the holiday, give charity. It should be like your gateway to any commandment because it opens up the heavens to empower to fuel whatever power this commandment has. You just amped it up by the charity. It's interesting, we mentioned before the Lubavitcher Rebbe with putting fixing a pushka to the wall of your house. It seems there's also the concept then that when you're cooking to give charity. I don't know if you're giving charity that the food is kosher, that the food tastes good or it's healthy, but to connect that also to charity, again, if you're doing it by day. We don't just on a regular basis give charity at night. No, obviously, if someone is coming to your door and collecting, you can give charity. But just to like put a few coins in the charity box, we don't do at night. We only do by day. So that was a number of different ideas of when, as part of your day, again, it should be that easy. You have a pushka box, a charity box, you have a plate of coins, and your hand should be many times a day giving the charity, and it trains your hand, changes the space, the energy of your home, and elevates all those moments. A lot's happening. Very powerful. Now go back to what I was saying. This is also a way for you to be God's tabernacle, God's home, because whenever we proactively serve God, we are God's home for those moments. So right now we are all serving God. Hopefully you're paying attention and not snoozing behind your screens. As long as you're up and your minds are invested and you're listening and you're learning, you're studying Torah right now. You're connecting to God. You are God's home at this moment. And when the class is over, you're not. It ended. There was a disconnect now. You're no longer God's home at this moment. And if you're praying, you're God's home. Close the book, you're not. You're saying Psalms, you're God's home. You finished, you're not. So there's all these opportunities on and off and on and off and on and off all day long to be God's home, to be God's tabernacle. But it only lasts for the duration of the act, but not for charity. Because as we're saying before, if you have a fixed percentage, as I said, the most standard percentage, the most basic bottom line is 10%. Of course, it's advisable to give more, 15%, 20%, more than 20%, but the basic bottom line is 10%. So if you are giving 10% of your earnings to God, that means all day long you're God's home because you're working all day long. And from the work of the entire day comes the money. And from the money comes a percentage. And that percentage you give to charity. So you need an all day's work to give that money to charity. So all day long, you got to be God's home. So that's an incredible thing that, again, uniquely only happens with charity. It's the only time when it happens. Every other commandment, it's for the duration of the commandment. So charity should be for as long as it takes me to write the check, or as long as it takes me to put that coin in the pushka. But no, the money came from the work. For the work to earn that nickel? No, for the entire day's work from which a percentage you're giving away. So all of that time, you get to be God's home. So that's an amazingly powerful perk, unbelievable bonus that only happens with charity. And there's something else that only happens with charity, which a little bit Shalamis alluded to before. It is the only commandment that we're allowed to test God. Non-Jews are allowed to test God. Jews are not. Jews are believers, the sons of believers. What does it mean to test God? To say, well, God, if you're really out there, I need X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to do this for you. I know you want me to light the Shabbat candles. I will light the Shabbat candles for the next 4 weeks, after which I need you to do this. And if you don't do this, I guess you're not out there, or you don't care about my commandments, or you're not listening to me. A Jew's never allowed to do that. A non-Jew's allowed to, a Jew's not allowed to. But for charity, we're allowed to test. What's the test of charity? The test of charity is, will God keep his word and pay us back for all the money we give? This is based on a verse. This is based on our sages. This is a classical piece. If somebody's like, whoa, this sounds a little weird. Did she make this up? No, this is very straight Talmud. A very powerful concept. In the Torah, when it talks about the commandment of charity, it says aser to aser, which in English you translate as like tithe, tithe. Thou shalt surely tithe. But our sages made a play on these words and said what God means is aser, tithe, give the charity, bishvil, in order, shetit asher, that you should become wealthy. So embedded in the verse on charity, our sages say, is God's promise of wealth when you give charity. What's the wealth? What's the promise? The promise is that whatever the percentage you're giving, that should create the whole. So let's go back to the person that's giving 10%. So if you're giving 10% and you gave $10 to charity, that should create $100 because your percentage creates the whole. If you're giving $1,000 to charity, that should create 100 times 1,000 because the percentage creates the whole. So whatever money you're giving, or sorry, 10 times, I said 1,000 times? I got a little confused there. If you're giving $1,000 and that's 10%, multiply it out. It's a very powerful promise of God. And it is the only commandment, literally, this is a law. It's the only commandment a Jew is allowed to test God. There's a verse that says it's an expression in the Talmud. The verse is V'nisuni na bazeh, which actually translates to mean, please test me in this. Like God's asking, please test me. I want to be tested. Why does God want to be tested? Because he wants you to give charity. And he knows, like we said before, it's hard. You're working hard for the money. Well, why? They should also go out to work. Or, of course, I'd love to give, but I need it. I need it for my heat bills. I need it for this. I need it for this. I need it for this. I'm stretched. I need it for more places than I have money to give it to. God says, V'nisuni na bazeh. Trust me. Test me. You need money? Give charity. You need more money? Give more charity. I will give you a financial tip. Most people give charity based on how much they earn. Again, you earned $100, you're giving 10%, you give 10. You earn $100, you give 20%, you give 20. You earned $1,000, you give $100. You're giving 20%, you earned $1,000, you give $200. And we're saying, let's say you give 20%, you gave the 200, that's going to create the next 1,000. You give 10%, you gave 100, that's going to create the next 1,000. The charity giving creates the money. So that's how most normal people do it. The money earned from that, you take your percentage off, you cut off your percentage, you're a religious Jew, you know this is what God wants, and you give it to charity and it will create money. You earned 1,000, you give your 10%, you cut off 100, you give it to your favorite charity, and God gives you another 1,000. At a certain point in my life, many years ago, I was like, I shouldn't give based on how much I earn. I should give based on how much I need. Because if the charity is creating the money, why am I limiting God to what I'm earning? You know, obviously I need more than I'm earning. And I started doing it differently. And I started thinking, not how much am I earning, but how much do I need? And based on how much I needed, that was a percentage I gave to charity. And it really unbelievably works. It's unbelievable how God is so creative, and comes through. He really sticks to his word. He will really pay you back for that money. So again, you could say, well, the amount of money I need, I don't have that money to give charity. So you have to stretch a bit. But I have advised many people this little personal tip because I'm sharing it with you, because I've shared it with many other people, and it really works. It really, really, really works. You have to really know that God comes through, and when you give that money, he will. You gave the 100, you give 10%, he's going to create the 1,000. You need more than 1,000, give him more. He will create more. God comes through. Uniquely for charity. Why? Because it's really spiritually important, and it's really spiritually difficult for us. It's sort of the two go together. It's so important. It's so difficult for us. Exactly. There is a relationship there. And that's why God also sweetens it by this amazing blessing of charity creating money. So whenever we're a little financially tight, we know we have to give more charity. And this also, of course, it's such a powerful commandment. Obviously, it connects very much to Mashiach. So what's the special connection between charity and Mashiach? Because Mashiach, in a sense, the idea of the redemption is about each one of us refining our animal, that very mundane, coarse part of ourself. Every one of us came into this world with some animal appendage. Some of us got lambs, and some of us got wolves, and some of us got tigers or bears, but we all have an animal soul, and we all need to give it to God. And again, every time I do something good, I'm working with my animal soul, and because my animal soul is the interface between my godly soul and my body. So every time I ever do anything good, my godly soul through my animal soul impacting my body. So every time my godly soul goes through my animal soul to impact my body, the animal soul gets a little refined, the body gets a little refined. I do another commandment, animal soul gets a little more refined, body gets a little more refined. It's a long process. It's a big animal soul. But again, when I give charity, because for me to give charity, I have to work. And for me to work, I'm investing my whole self. So it's not like this little piece of my soul, this little piece of my animal soul, this little piece of my body. It's the whole deal. So my whole animal soul, my whole body are all immersed in work. Which means when I give charity with that money, the whole moves to God. That's why our sages say, I'm sure at some point you've heard this concept, Gedolat tzedakah shemekarevet et hagula. Great is charity that it hastens the redemption. Why does charity hasten the redemption? Why don't my prayers hasten the redemption? Why doesn't my Torah study hasten the redemption? Why doesn't my Ahavat Yisrael hasten the redemption? Why does charity hasten the redemption? For this reason. Because the charity uniquely is giving God my whole animal soul, my whole body's energy. It's moving it from mundane, from coarse, from physical to godly. Each time I'm giving charity. So if God needs me, the whole me refined to bring the redemption, when I do, it's like a very American technique. You know, Americans want like fast, efficient. We don't care about the process. We care about the product. So efficiency, the fastest way to bring this physical world to God is through charity. And that's why not love of a fellow Jew, not Torah study, not prayer, not saying those Psalms and drawing down all of God's kindness and compassion. Specifically, charity is so powerful in bringing the redemption. It's interesting because even non-Jews are obligated according to God to give charity. It's that important. So someone who is we call a Noachide, meaning a devout, God-fearing non-Jew, has to give charity, has to be concerned about helping the poor and needy, individually, communally. I mean, if you remember the Torah, Sodom and Amorah, the cities that were destroyed, I mean, obviously they were very evil on many levels. But the reason for their destruction, for what did they deserve to be destroyed? Their refusal to help the destitute. They outlawed charity. They outlawed helping the poor. That caused their destruction. So I don't want to tell you all the horrific things they did because they did a lot of very immoral things. But that wasn't reason for their total destruction, complete annihilation of the entire, not just the people, the entire city. For what did they warrant annihilation of the entire city? Refusal to give charity. And these are non-Jews, which just shows you how incredibly important to God for all of mankind is to give charity, is to help the poor, is to support the needy individually or communally. We have to be individually focused, we have to be communally focused, and it's that powerful. So I see we're going to stop here. I figured we get exactly about where we got, about halfway through all the things I want to say about charity, because we're not done. And hopefully, of course, this is a very overt goal. I want everyone to be really like charged to do this commandments and know how incredible it is and how much God needs it, wants it, and is going to pay back for it. And now, let's talk a little bit about the Torah portion. I could talk about the Torah portion for like the next few hours, but don't worry, I have 9 minutes left. I won't go over time. So just a few little thoughts about this incredible Torah story, which, as I'm saying, you could talk and talk and talk and talk about. I gave another class this week. I spent an hour talking. I could have gone on much more. I didn't even cover everything I wanted to say. So much to talk about. So one thing that I thought was a small, powerful point. So if you're all aware of the Torah portion, you want to sound knowledgeable when your children come home on the Shabbat and you have your meal, it's Vayetze. It's the incredible travelings, journeyings of our forefather, Yaakov, Jacob, leaving the spiritual bastion of his home, Beersheba, going to Haran, the most evil place in the world, dealing with one of the most evil villains of the world, Lavan, for 20 years. And at the end of the Torah portion, when he leaves, like 20 years over this Torah portion. Really more, because it's really actually 34 years over this Torah portion, but it's okay. So he comes to the house of Lavan. He's coming to get married. He's coming to build the Jewish people. And right away, he meets shepherdess Rachel. He knows she's his soulmate. He knows she's the embodiment of the Jewish people. He knows she's the embodiment of God's energy of Malchut, of sovereignty. She's the one. No question. He was very holy. He's 77 at this point. You know what he was doing? He goes to her father, Lavan, and eventually, skipping a lot of details, says, okay, that's it. I'm willing to work for you for Rachel. That was no problem. 7 years. No big deal. Obviously, understand in those times, you got paid to marry someone. They gave you a dowry. You didn't pay to marry them, but okay, we're dealing with Lavan. So here he is for 7 years, like real physical 365-day years. He's working for Rachel, for his soulmate. And he's getting older. You know, he's 77. He's not going to marry until he's 83. 84. Sorry, 84. He wants to establish the Jewish people. There's 12 tribes that have to be born. He's going to be 84. So you think he loves her so much. He so much wants to do this. He so much wants to marry her. Those 7 years would really, really stretch. It would be very, very agonizingly long. Like, oh, one day down, 6 years and 364 days to go. A half a year down, 6 years and 6 months to go. But the Torah says otherwise. The Torah says something very interesting. The Torah says, and they were in his eyes like a few days because of his love for her. I think that's such a powerful lesson in our lives, because what the Torah means is he loved her so much. But it wasn't because he loved her so much every day was like an eternity. Because he loved her so much, every day was like the blink of an eye. Because he was so busy preparing himself. He was so busy getting ready. He was so busy to be worthy to be the father of the Jewish people. Never mind, he's devoted his whole life to godliness and holiness. I only have 7 years left, and then I'm going to do it. I only have 7 years left to be married. I got a lot to accomplish, got to move. And when you're in that space, when you look at time, not as like sitting on your hands, I wish we could teach our children this, right? For us to first teach it to ourselves. You're not like, oh, what am I going to do? Open up your phone and, oh, there went some time. When you look at time as like what I need to accomplish, there's never enough time. It moves so quickly because we feel that focus on what we're doing, how we're stretching, instead of just like waiting. That was one idea that I thought really was so relevant for so many of us in the Torah portion. And another small idea that I also thought was very powerful. So fast forward in the story, he works 7 years, Lavan tricks him, he marries Leah, a week later, he marries Rachel, and he's working another 7 years for her. And they both innately are barren by birth. All the matriarchs were barren. Sarah, Rivka, Rebecca, Rachel, Rachel, Leah, they're all barren. It says God wants to hear their prayers, so they were all barren. But Leah immediately got healed because he wanted to give her children because of the whole backstory of the marriage. So he writes away, gives her one child. She's so excited. She's so happy. She's so grateful. He gives her a second. He gives her a third. And then he gives her a fourth. Boom, 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 boom. We're told each one was born like 7 months apart. And she wasn't like overwhelmed and stressed. She was so excited with each one. This is a Jewish people. I'm the mother of 4 of the 12 tribes. It's amazing. She knew there was going to be 12 tribes. She was a prophetess and she got 4. She was so excited. And she does something very special. When her 4th son is born, she names him Yehuda. They say in English, Judah, Yehuda. And she gives the reason why. For each child she named, she gave a reason why. Why did she name him Yehuda? She said, Hapam odeh es Hashem. Now I'm giving thanks to God. And therefore she names him Yehuda. Now, why is she now giving thanks? I mean, give thanks with the verse or give thanks with the, why now? So she said very simply, I know with my prophetic spirit, Yaakov's going to have 4 wives. I know with my prophetic spirit, he's going to have 12 sons. I can do a little math. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. So every wife is going to should get 3 sons. So of course I was grateful and happy with Reuven and Shimon and Levi, but that's what was coming to me. I got Yehuda. I don't deserve that. That's got nothing to do with me. That's beyond anything I deserve. Like, I'm supposed to get 3. I got 4. In the end, she got 6, but okay, she didn't know that. She was like, this is unbelievable. Our sages say she was the first person to ever thank God like that, which is so interesting because, I mean, it's not 5 years from creation, it's been already over 20 generations since creation. And obviously in every generation there lived a completely righteous person. So there was Adam, who lived almost 1,000 years, 930 years, Mr. Shelach, Hanoch, Noah, Abraham. There were many, many very righteous people. And obviously they all had to thank God for the good in their life. But they thank God in a sense of like, I appreciate it, but like, I understand that it was coming to me and I appreciate that you gave it to me. Leah was the first one to say, I didn't deserve this one. I didn't expect this. This is way beyond anything I deserved, anything I thought I was getting. I can't believe it. Thank you. Now, why am I bringing this out? Because that's us. Because Yehuda is the name in Hebrew for the Jew. A Jew we refer to as Yehudi. First time we actually see that is in the Megillah of Esther, but we're not going to talk about that now, the reason. But this is the term in Hebrew for the Jew, Yehudi. Why are we called Yehudi? To express this quality of Yehudah. To express that this is the Jew. This is the Jewish trait. This is the Jewish energy. The Jew is someone who looks at his life and says, big, wide eyes, thank you. Undeserved kindness, unbelievable, totally more than I deserve. I can't believe, God, you're giving me this. For what do I get this? Thank you, thank you, thank you for all the good that you're constantly flowing to me. That's our name, that's our essence, that's our job in this world. The job of a Jew is to acknowledge God. And Yehudah, Yehudi, is a person that's acknowledging God. So that started in this week's Torah portion, Leah to Yehudah, her fourth son, which became the name of the entire Jewish people. And the name expresses essence, which means this is part of my essence. This is part of your essence. What are we in this world for? To acknowledge God. So we should relook at what's going on in our life with big, wide, excited, open eyes and be like, wow, God, thank you for all the good you're constantly, and be specific, not just in general. I'm sure we all have fill in the details. I don't deserve this. Such a blessing here. This worked out here. This was supposed to be so stressful and just fell into place. This was beyond the last moment and then you worked it out. Thank you. We should keep saying it. You take my advice, you write it down, make it very solid, very part of this world. And it's a way to live. It's a way to live as a Jew, is to be a Yehudah, to be a Yehudi, to be someone that as they look, they just feel constantly showered with undeserved blessings. And as we look that way, that's how God responds. Thank you so much for joining. I said I wouldn't go over time. I'm 1 minute over. Thank you so much for joining. Have a wonderful week where you should have so many opportunities to feel you are the recipient of God's undeserved for you, but you're getting it anyway, kindness. And have lots and lots and lots of opportunities to say thank you.
Thank you so much.
Amen. And same to you, Mrs. Turn. This was amazing. Thank
Amen.
you. The way you
Thank
delivered
you.
it, I have not heard it like this before. Thank you.
Thank you.